Okay, welcome. Got some of the usual suspects and a few new people. So we've been going through a 7-point mind training. This is an incredible text that is really designed, I think, almost for us in mind. A Western world that's busy and full of activity. And its whole force is this ability to adapt to difficult situations, a busy lifestyle, and make that a path to enlightenment. So really wonderful timing for a text like this, though it's been around for a long time. We just had Venerable Tenzin Priyadarshi here this last weekend, and some incredible teachings that he gave really to imbue our minds in the idea of, much more than the idea, to imbue our minds in bodhicitta, in the mind of awakening. And his presentation of it is one that shifts an attitude of something that I really need to work at, that is difficult or challenging, into a sense of a well that I can draw from, that it's available to me. This is a resource. Being compassionate is something that is invigorating, and it's something that inspires us. It's something that moves us to engage in it, and it doesn't wear you down. And so to get to that point, though, it takes a little effort. But it was so wonderfully presented. And if we can approach it that way, and that's where we're going in our text today, there is an incredible shift in the way that we're able to engage in life, and life becomes our Dharma practice. So it's not this big, difficult thing that I have to pay attention to somebody right now. Oh my God, and they just keep talking. It can be so painful, right, that to listen to another human being when you're in a hurry, or to listen to another human being when you think you already know what they're going to say. And you already know. How painful that can be. So where's all that pain come from? Why can it be so difficult and so things when somebody calls you that you don't want to talk to? We talked about it the other week because these days we have phones where we can actually see who they are, and we just swipe. Get that later. In the old days, we used to actually have to pick it up. It's like gambling. Hey, hello, and you're already all in. So where's all this pain and suffering comes from when, if I am just listening to another human being talk to me? And that can be both an incredibly challenging thing or an incredibly joyous thing, often a very neutral thing, and sometimes just something I need to do so I can go do something else. And what's the key component there that creates it from being painful or joyous or neutral? And fundamentally, it's how we see it and how we relate to it. Where does that resistance come from? And so we're moving into a part of the text where it's giving us a way to shift how we engage with others, how we engage with adversity, that can just transform that, it's so-and-so, into an opportunity to engage in the path to enlightenment. And that's a fundamental shift that is just so empowering, so empowering. So we're at this third point, and as we enter the third point, those of you that haven't been here, we've gone through the preliminary practices of really recognizing this rare and precious opportunity we have in this very lifetime to achieve enlightenment. We've hit the main point, the actual practice is to have and cultivate the mind of awakening, that of bodhicitta, both relative and ultimate, seeing clearly with a mind that is imbued with the great compassion, Mahakaruna, that wants to liberate all beings of their suffering. And recognizing the nature of phenomena as a life that we have in a more accurate lens, a framework that correlates much more to reality than the one we usually operate in. And a method now to do that. So it's important that we have the framework first so that as we engage in the practice, we know how this works and how it makes sense. Otherwise, we wind up shooting ourselves in the foot a lot, because common practice is we do a lot of things in our lives that actually create more suffering, thinking we're alleviating suffering. And it's an easy trap to fall into. A dear friend of mine who's been, he's been a practitioner for quite a while. I've known him for quite a while. Very sincere practitioner, good meditator, big heart. And we were just having a conversation the other day. And this big epiphany comes. He's been so busy, and I find it a fascinating way of looking at it. So our suffering is living in a condition-limited existence that we call samsara, right? Samsara is a limited, conditional existence that we live in, that we engage in, that is very nature is dissatisfaction. There's an immense amount of suffering just being human, right? We're going to age, we're going to get sick, we're going to die, your friends are going to come and go. You're going to have ups and downs. You're going to get sick. You're going to have accidents. I mean, the world, it's messy. It's just really messy. And we keep trying to fix it up, I always kind of think of a big, dam, and we keep trying to plug those holes, and there's other ones happening, but inevitably there's a whole bunch of water on the other side. And it's just going to come and go. And so we'll spend a great deal of time trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent, like our job, our relationships, our health. We're going to try to make things provide us a lasting happiness that just can't provide it, right? There's nothing outside of you that can give you a lasting happiness. It just doesn't exist. And if you find it, let me know. I'd be interested. The perfect dinner, the wonderful vacation of a lifetime, the perfect job, the whatever it is. That very thing that we think will provide us that lasting happiness, when we dig a little deeper, is usually the source of most of our worry, fears, and concerns. We might lose it, it might not last, all those things that we do, right? And this body, likewise. Don't know. So just understanding the nature of reality is kind of helpful, because we get confused and we forget all this stuff. We actually think we can get a job and a career that will be sustainable and provide me the things that I need in my lives, and that's not subject to ups and downs and flows. That there's no way I'm going to get in a bike accident. That's not in my agenda. It's not in my plan. That my friends are going to be around and love and care for me, the way that I would like them to. That my spouse will always be there for me, won't die before me, because we have a rule, right? I'm going first. And that we can make up, how we want the world. And we'll sit out there trying to adjust this world out there in a way that somehow is going to meet my needs, which is really a recipe for a lot of suffering. And so in this conversation I had with this dear friend, who's a Dharma practitioner, who knows all this, we get busy. And fundamentally, he said, I talked to him, he goes, sorry, I've been too busy building up samsara to spend any time escaping it. And isn't that what we do so much, Oh, I need to go do all this other stuff so I can go do a little practice. And then it's like, I'm building up this big samsara conditioned world, and then I'm going to go spend a few minutes trying to escape it. And then I'm going to go build it up some more, and then I'm going to get this, and then when I get this job or that thing, and this gets, then I'm going to go do a little bit. And so it's this funny cycle of, this realization came to me once when this guy who had been a monk, and has a job and a career and this and that, and they asked him, you go to, Dharma teachings anymore? He goes, no, I'm too busy with my business. I'm thinking, too busy building samsara to escape it, And it happens, right? It's very easy to happen. So this is where we forget and we get caught up in it because it's our habitual way of being. When I get all this work done, or when I get all that done, or then maybe I'll take a little time to open up this precious opportunity to be completely liberated of all suffering. But that's later. Because right now I'm going to dig in and create a lot more. And I'll get to that later. It's a fascinating thing. And we can talk about it, we can know it. This guy's known it for years, and he's just doing it. He's all in. He's just all in. And it was fine. That's why I had the first thing. All right, I've just been reinforcing samsara for a long time here. So there needs to be a shift. There needs to be a realization that many of the things that I do to alleviate suffering are actually creating much more long-term suffering in my life. And unless we know that, we're not going to stop doing it. So that's why the Buddha started with the truth of suffering. First truth. That life's messy. We're in a conditioned existence. And these very things, the very nature of these relationships and the way that we live, its intrinsic nature leads to a lot of suffering. But it's unnecessary. We don't need to. And that the whole fundamental teaching of the Buddha is how to not suffer. And then the working hypothesis with that is pretty straightforward. That if we see things clearly, we won't suffer because we won't do stupid things anymore. We won't create suffering because we go, well, that hurts. It's a very similar thing to putting your hand over a flame. That hurts. I stop doing it. If I actually saw how things are and how I am and how things exist and how they're interdependent and how they cause and effect, and that my mental and emotional suffering is not coming from that person I don't want to talk to. It's coming from the very fact that I don't want to talk to them. It's here, not there. And why wouldn't I want to listen to another human being who's just like me, trying to find their way? And why is it so painful? Because it's not them. It's that I don't want to talk to them. Now, what if I was able to see that a little more accurately and know that the mental and emotional suffering that I experience in life, the cause is always here, not there. Out there is the catalyst, the trigger, but the cause is here. No seeds for this. This is the very same person that I don't want to talk to. If someone told me, hey, they just lost their daughter the other day. Now all of a sudden I can listen to them all day long. I just learned something about them. Now I can listen to them. That very person I don't like because of some quality or something they did, I have a good friend who maybe did the very same thing. But they're my dear friend. Well, they're an idiot. Where's the difference? Where's the difference? And it's not out there. It's just not out there. But we think it's out there. And so we react to that. And we try to avoid those people and get these people. And then we get the people we like. And man, we try to train them properly. So they could just stay that way a lot. So I can be real happy. And then we say things like, I love you. That's a funny thing. I love you. And we forget that if we love somebody, it's about something we give them. If I love someone, I want them to be genuinely happy, to be fulfilled, to have their needs met, to find their highest potentials, and I'm willing to do something about it. But our sense of love often is much more of a conditional thing. It's not so much I love them. I love how they make me feel when they do certain things that I like. And then when they do things I don't like, suddenly that love is not so much there. So do I love them, or do I love how they make me feel on certain days when they do certain things that are appropriate to how I think people ought to be and that make me happy? What do I really love? You know, we get confused a lot about this idea of the words we choose and how we engage in the world. And it becomes very transactional, and we just keep trying to train the people we like to stay that way. The job we like to stay that way. You know, the house I want to be happy in, to be a certain way. And we forget that everything in the world changes all the time, including the job, the relationships, and everything. So fundamentally, you know, we talk about these sort of three truths, the way the world is. And if we really look at our misunderstanding of the world, it's these misperceptions of the world. We try to make things permanent that aren't permanent. For the record, nothing's permanent. Even if they tell you it'll go on your permanent record, not true. They're lying to you. They're lying to you. But we'll try to do that, you know. And we'll try to find lasting happiness in things that can't provide it. Nothing outside of yourself is going to provide that. It can't. It just can't. It can be the catalyst for joy and stuff for temporary periods of time. Stimulus-driven. I'm about to have a stimulus-driven pleasure. A nice, warm drink of water on a day like today. It's very pleasurable. And a very drink of water, though, you know, not having it could be suffering. Or if you're full, then it's not the cause. And it's very temporary. And then the big one is this sense of self, and that's what we've covered for quite a bit of time, that we tend to carry an identity of John as well, you don't carry the identity of John, I do. Hopefully you don't carry the identity of John, unless your name's St. John. So I carry this identity as though I'm the same John that from 10 years ago, and I'm not. That guy's different, and I'm different now than I was when I walked in the door. And things are changing about me. But I'll carry a very big storyline. You know, I'm responsible or I'm irresponsible, I'm funny, I'm this, I'm that, I'm all these things, I'm my accomplishments. And we make up this big story about John, and I carry that around, throw it in a backpack. And I'll tell you things, you know, like, man, I got issues, man, I got issues. I'm not good at this, I'm really good at that, I'm this and that. As though all that's true. That I don't change and that I can't change. When in fact, I am changing all the time, and I can actually change in ways I haven't even thought of yet. I can learn new languages, I can learn new habits, I can see more clearly. If I'm impatient, I can learn to be patient. You know, if I'm not very compassionate, I can learn to become compassionate. I can evolve and change. So in the world that is a little more accurate, and so this is the fundamental sort of teachings of Buddhism, is that the more that we can live in accordance to reality as things are and how things work, the less suffering we're going to have, because we're not going to be building up all these stories trying to make things permanent that aren't permanent, find happiness in things that don't exist, and carrying around some sense of John that isn't isn't the same guy that was here 10 years ago or an hour ago, and won't be the same tomorrow. And John arises in dependence upon who I'm talking to. Who I'm talking to. Have you ever noticed how you are different based on who you're talking to? Sometimes you're a client. Sometimes you're the boss. Sometimes you're the elder, and sometimes you're the younger. Sometimes you're the pedestrian. Sometimes, and all those roles, I'm different. All of a sudden, I'm different just based on who I'm talking to. I'm a family member now, as opposed to a friend, as opposed to a stranger, or an introduction. I keep changing in dependence upon who's in that room at the moment, who I'm talking to, or even who I'm thinking about. I can go from pretty happy to instantly pissed off because someone brought up so-and-so again. I could be perfectly content and get a new news flash. Oh my God, really? And I can be really angry and somebody gives me some new information. I can be really happy. So I'm not happy, I'm not sad, I'm not any of those things. I experience happiness and sadness, and it comes and it goes. And it's always in dependence upon who I'm with and what I'm paying attention to. And that's much more accurately how the world works in your experience of it. But that's not the way we see it. That person's an idiot, that person's a great person, they're all right, you know, this and that. I love this person, I hate this person, And we just do this, and it's all this outward experience that if all these things were different, maybe I could be happy. Good luck. And we just do it. And we can talk about it all day and still go walk out the door and do it. It's a fascinating thing. So we're habituated in a particular way of seeing things in ways that don't really correlate to how things actually are. And so Buddhism is about, let's see how they are. So we spent some time on that. And understanding how things are, then we're ready to do the work to shift, to really shift our experience of the world. Which leads us to point 3. The third point. Often it's called transforming adversity to the path, onto the path of enlightenment. Here it's using unfavorable circumstances as aids to awakening. All right, using unfavorable circumstances as aids to awakening. The use of unfavorable circumstances as aids to spiritual awakening is perhaps the best known aspect of the 7-point mind training and constitutes a very substantial part of this text. This is really the core of these Lojong teachings, is how we can really work with adverse conditions. Because fundamentally, that's where all the growth is. Yeah. Very few people make their way to a Dharma center or to their spiritual path when life is all good and gravy. We usually wind up here because something's not working so well. And we want to figure out how to be okay. When the environment and its inhabitants are enslaved by evil, transform unfavorable circumstances into the path of awakening. So, in the text here, what they're saying is, and this is a comment from a long time ago. The commentary that was written here, he commented that the environment of his own day, again, a long time ago, and age, really fit the bill. An evil time when unwholesome thoughts and deeds were rampant. He's writing in the 12th century in Tibet, but his words are equally pertinent to our experience now. Right? There's a lot of difficulty out there, a lot of deluded, afflicted minds in our time. He states emphatically that although there are vast numbers of practices within Buddha Dharma, there's tantric practices, there's the cultivation of meditative stability, meditation on emptiness, many hundreds of others. There's lots of methods and practices in the realm of Buddhism that are incredibly beneficial, that help transform the mind. But he states very emphatically that not one will bear proper fruit in the absence of a mind training practice, and more specifically, the ability to transform unfavorable circumstances to the path. So that's a pretty big statement. They're saying, there's all these practices. There's these, right here in Buddhism, we've got Theravadan Buddhism, we've got Zen Buddhism, we've got, Maya Buddhism. There's, if any of you've really looked at, Buddhism, it'll freak you out. I mean, where do I begin, right? And then within Tibetan Buddhism, there's 4 different lineages, and are you a Nyingma? Are you a Gelug? What there's all this stuff, and the reason for that is there's a lot of different people in the world, and different people need different things, and so these skillful teachings were brought for different mindsets. It's not like this one's any more right than that one. Here's some tools that work with people of these mindsets and conditions that arise. And but what he's saying here is that none of those are going to bear proper fruit without being able to transform adversity to the path. And here, Alan Wallace, who wrote this text, he states, "I've always been leery of the claim, this way is the only way, and anything else is a waste of time." It's good to be leery of that one, isn't it? But I believe that this statement is perfectly justified And what he's saying here is that it's not to say that Tibetan Buddhism or seven-point mind training has any monopoly on transforming unfavorable circumstances into a spiritual path. What he's saying is, but unless we are skilled in dealing with such circumstances and can digest them into our spiritual practice rather than groaning in complaint or merely praying that they pass, then our chances are extremely remote to be able to stabilize the mind and develop bodhicitta or progressing in any kind of practice. So he's not saying it's this text or it's that thing. He's saying that fundamental point that if we are a, fair weather practitioner, we're not going to get far because there's a lot of adversity out there. And that's where the stability really comes from, the opportunity of practice, joyful effort. We don't need to be that practitioner that goes to the retreats that has the really nice cushions and the longer breaks. And trust me, people shop for these. Here's the one with the retreat center. This person takes these nice long breaks and this and that. And we can sit there and get our thing. And I can only meditate, and I get, all these cushions in a particular way. But then our practice is not even just limited to the idea of me doing a practice. But my real practice is, how am I with someone I don't like? Now I got some practice. One of my dear friends, Mark Maloney, he's an Australian. I understand half of what he says, usually. Getting good at it, though. They've got some funny words. But so he gets to, every year, he goes and he does this conference, and this Mind Life conference. He gets to sit with some pretty amazing beings, including Mathieu Ricard. Mathieu Ricard is an incredible monastic, someone who's done, decades of retreat and practice. And they often call him the happiest man on earth, He's this monk who's he's done the real deal. He's the meditator. He has stabilized the mind. He's reached shamatha. He's done all these things. And he's just this incredible being. So Mark, gets to have tea with him. And so he's checking in with him from a year earlier. And Mathieu Ricard says, "How's your loving kindness practice going?" Mark goes, "Oh yeah, it's going great. It's going really good. Loving practice. I do it all the time. It's good." Then Mathieu Ricard says, "How is it with the people you don't like?" Mark says, he thinks about it. He goes, "Well, there's this one guy." And Mathieu says, "That's your practice, that one guy." And we forget that. It's easy to do my practice under favorable conditions with people that I like and situations. And it's often the case of when we're on a spiritual path, what we'll do is we'll pick up a text and we'll go, "Yeah, no, I get this, I like this guy, this resonates with me." And then I get to chapter 3. Yeah, nah, skip that chapter, because that doesn't resonate with me. And so what happens is we all too often will just, I like that bit of that, and I like that bit of that. And what happens if I'm only picking what resonates with me, it's going to be hard to change me. Because what I'm doing is finding things that validate me, as opposed to things that challenge the very core of what I'm grasping to that creates all my suffering. It's often the things that don't resonate with me are what I actually need to look at. And that's where we get our growth, And so that's what he's saying here. He's saying that unless we learn that, it doesn't matter what you're practicing. It doesn't even matter what religion you are. You're not going to grow much, because we're going to keep going the other way. We're not going to look at the core root of our struggle. And So the approach that's recommended here is to bear in mind that whatever misfortune we experience comes as a result of our actions in previous lives. In Buddhism, unwholesome is defined in terms of its ripening effect. The full maturation of a very potent deed may occur later in the same lifetime, though more frequently the full karmic effects from any deed ripen in future lifetime. I'm just going to read this and we'll break it down. If the full maturation consists of misfortune, suffering, or grief, so if it shows up, if I have misfortune, suffering, or grief, then by definition the deed that created that is unwholesome. Thus, Buddhism claims the existence of a natural morality. There are distinctions between wholesome and unwholesome, these distinction of deeds, that hold true for beings, humans or otherwise. It is simply in the nature of things that certain actions, even mental actions, such as malice, are unwholesome. So what he's saying here is if we kind of get how things work, first off, good and bad, it's not like that. It's like wholesome and unwholesome is I did something and this seed, the karmic seed of that, is going to give an unpleasant result. Well, that makes it unwholesome. I did something and the result's going to be pleasurable. Well, that's a wholesome act. So the definition is kind of working the other way around. It says, when I do certain things, I create seeds that give rise to much more pleasurable experiences as I engage in the world. When I do unwholesome things, it's going to give rise to afflicted states, anger, hatred, resentment, jealousy, types of things like that grows. And so what he's working on here is that we understand that those seeds are planted in my consciousness. They're not out there. Out there is a bunch of phenomenon in your karma and all kinds of things going on. But how I experience you has a lot more to do with how I've been living my life. And if I start changing how I live my life, I plant different seeds and I start seeing you differently. So that you want to get rid of annoying people, you don't yell at them. Because that just plants seeds for you're going to have a lot more annoying people showing up at your door. That's how we step on our own feet a lot. I get angry, I react with anger, I'm planting more seeds of anger. Guess what's going to happen more frequently? Anger arises, I realize that anger is arising as a result of my mind coming in conflict now with what's happening, and I know that how I respond is what matters. I can't do anything about the anger that arose, because that arose already. It arose as a result of certain seeds in my mind. But I do know that if I don't like being angry, I can respond differently. And those seeds of anger don't grow anymore. But that's not usually the way we react, because it seems like as if I get angry and I do something about it, what I tend to do is actually reinforce anger in my life, as opposed to recognizing that anger is a mental affliction arising from my experience, and that the seeds of that were created in my consciousness. So if you understand that, you're going to be much more skillful. That's why you don't put your hand on the flame. You go, I don't like being angry, pissed off, resentful, scared, insecure. I mean, I just generally, that's not where I want to live. So I'm going to stop feeding those seeds. So if I understand that, then I'm going to look at this a little bit differently. When unfavorable circumstances occur, whether it's a serious illness or a simple interruption in my meditation, right? Some noise outside. So whether it's a big deal or a little deal, some people may groan helplessly in response to the obstacle. You know, that's how come we can get like, oh my God, I actually have to listen to somebody on a phone. Yeah? Here's one I bet you can all relate to. It's torture, right? Have you ever had to hit a call center where it's all automated and you have to push this button and push that button and re-enter that? And you have to go through all the menus to get to the menu you want, when ultimately After you pushed all the buttons, you finally get to the one that says, I can speak to another human being. And then they put you in the wrong department anyway. Now that can be torture, right? But what's painful about it? I have a phone, and I'll tell you what, I've been in India, and you go try to deal with that administrative process and talk to a person. That's a lot worse than pushing buttons, I'm just telling you. And it seems like it's just so hard that, I actually have to push some more buttons. My gosh. And then now they want me to you know how hard it is to take my finger and do that? It's horrific. And then we'll just tell everybody for the next 2 hours. You know how many freaking buttons I had to push to talk to a human being? It's horrible. And it's actually suffering when you're doing it, isn't it? And then we lament about it. Now, what about the perspective of sometimes people used to have to drive many miles to go to an office to wait in line to pull a number to maybe talk to someone who may or may not be able to help them. I'm just at home pushing a button. Where's the suffering? Where's the suffering? You know, fundamentally, it's in my mind, right? Because I think things should be different than they are. They should have another human being on there who could be there for me and attend to my needs and take care of this, because this is just ridiculous. Who's really being ridiculous? Because I know how to run a multi-million-dollar business with all the systems that tends to customer care. Sorry, I don't have that training. But I can be sitting here on the other phone thinking how I could run that place and how it ought to be different. But when we're doing it, that's torture. And yet, we're just pushing some buttons. Then eventually we'll get to somebody that we need to talk to, hopefully. Or they'll hang up. I've had that happen. Haven't you? Where you get cut off at the end. Oh, I gotta do it again. And they'll lament about it. So what if we looked at that very differently as an opportunity to cultivate our highest potentials, merit and wisdom? For example, the perfection of patience. Now I have an opportunity to practice patience. What if, when the phone rang, I use that as a mindfulness spell? The phone rings, and I go, I'm going to be in the present moment. And I'm going to now have the ability to be fully aware of the person I'm talking to, and maybe set the intention that I'm going to talk to another human being in a way that is beneficial, regardless of who they are, and say hello. How would that conversation be different? As opposed to, really? Swipe. Later. How does that improve my life? As opposed to, I'm going to develop some compassion and clarity and be there for another human being. How does that improve my life? What seeds am I planting? Because everything that we think, say, or do is planting a seed. Habits. And if karma is too, esoteric of a thought process, just think of it in terms of habits and conditioning. What you do a lot, you tend to do more. That's just the way it is, right? We just develop habits. And so we develop mental habits. We develop mental habits of dealing with anger and frustration. Then we talk about how frustrating something is. And we do it. You know how frustrating it is to call a call center? And then I tell my friends how frustrating it is. Do you think it's going to be any less frustrating the next time? Heck no. I've just reinforced how frustrating it is and how wrong it is. I'm just creating more habits for that, that's all. So if you think of karmic tendencies in that way, it's a very tangible thing we can relate to in our daily life. But that person can be an opportunity to cultivate patience and well-being, and I can actually engage with the automated voice as an opportunity to cultivate patience and tolerance and well-being and peace of mind in adversity. So when unfavorable circumstances occur, simple or hard, once we've truly entered the door of Dharma, we'll begin to respond actively to unfavorable circumstances in a way that transforms them. Right? So those are some pretty clear, real simple examples. How? By cultivating the attitude that whatever misfortune may arise is a blessing of the spiritual mentor and the triple gem of Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha. This opportunity is a blessing, that every event in your life is an opportunity to really grow. And the context for that is that if you look at your life, you will find that your greatest times of growth came from adversity, didn't it? When you really dug deep and had to figure it out, it's because there was pain. That's why we grow. And when we're not in pain, when life is cool and breezy, how hard are you working on your spiritual path and your mental afflictions and your discomfort? Or how much time are you spending building up samsara and spackling the walls, getting a new jacuzzi outside, so I can make samsara really comfortable, you know? Rearrange the deck chairs on the Titanic, make it really nice. Because that's what we do, right? We're not doing it, you know? And we start thinking, maybe I'll go to the Dharma Center, maybe I'll go do that retreat, maybe I'll go to, what's the movie out now? Wonder Woman, maybe I'll go do that instead. Yeah. So when we recognize that these are moments of opportunity, and opportunity on multiple levels, one is the ability to transform my mind. Another opportunity, though, is that afflicted state of mind that arose, well, that karma is now being evaporated. The karma I've created to have that painful experience is ripening and leaving if I let it go. If I don't grab onto it and go, oh, no, I'm going to water that anger. That karma is actually leaving my experience. And I don't need to water it anymore. I can plant new seeds. So there's an opportunity to relieve ourselves of karma we've already created and plant this incredible ripe seeds of compassion, kindness, tolerance to transform our lives. So he's saying that if we view it as this blessing, he said, not to say that your teacher's throwing you curveballs in an effort to mess up your life. Trust me, there's enough pain out there, nobody else needs to throw it at you. And we don't need to go looking for it either. I mean, there's enough, it'll happen. So you're saying, instead what we do is we bear in mind that this teaching assumes that we have begun to cultivate ultimate bodhicitta, and to understand that the lack of intrinsic identity of phenomena, misfortunes and obstacles to practice do not exist intrinsically. So that outer experience, whether we find it really a pain or really joyful, it's not really in those events or those people. For something to be a misfortune for me, I must identify it as such. This is such a painful experience. If I refuse to identify something as an obstacle, but instead I accept this illness as a blessing of my spiritual guide, then it becomes so. I'm accepting this opportunity to cleanse and purify and ripen karma. And I can do it for the benefit of all sentient beings. Then it's not such a terrible thing. Now it's a blessing. What makes it a misfortune is me labeling it. So that's the thing, right? we've had these talks on labeling. And the same thing that I may find in misfortune, somebody finds pretty easy. It takes much courage and knowledge of Dharma to say that, to mean it, and to act accordingly. But it is extremely potent. So there is a huge shift when that happens. There's a huge shift. And we don't need a big bolt of lightning to do it. That's the other kind of, I think, thing that people run into is I just keep doing the same stupid thing again, or I just can't get it, or, when's that? Like somehow magically, I'm just going to, I heard that Dharma talk, that Lama blessed me, I'm purified, and I see the light. That'll last about 20 minutes usually. This is a process that we develop by consistent practice over time. And we get a little better at it over time. And we start to notice, I didn't react as angrily as I used to. I was a little more patient with so-and-so than I used to be. And what happens is a slow, gradual process of working with the mind, because we have a habituated mind of many lifetimes coming in. And it is like steering a Titanic. It's not a motorboat. It's, okay. And so I try it a little bit, and I practice a little more. And I keep bringing my mind back to how things are again and again and again every single day. And then this ripens. It takes, as he says here, courage, knowledge of the Dharma. And that knowledge of the Dharma means much more than it makes sense to me. It's a real knowledge that says, not only that it makes sense, I'm willing to test it. I'm going to check this out. And by the way, everything here is things to check out. Blind faith in Buddhism is not advocated at any level. It either makes enough sense to try it out, and then you do it, and then you experience it. But you test it. You test it. So that kind of knowledge, that it makes sense, and I've done it, and I'm willing to do it more, this knowledge of Dharma. So courage to try it, knowledge of it, and then to mean it, and then to actually do it. That's a whole other thing. To actually act accordingly. And it's very potent when we can do this. We can then rebound from calamities with courage and understanding instead of wilting under their pressure. And this is necessary for a deep and fruitful practice. It's a huge shift when we realize that what's happening to me is not the problem. What's happening to me is not the problem. The problem is how I'm relating to what's happening to me. And within that process, that everything that's happening to me is an opportunity for me to escape samsara, to eliminate suffering. Every single thing that happened to me is an opportunity to cultivate merit and wisdom, the mind of awakening. And when we do that, we get to what Venerable Tenzin was talking about, recognizing that these people that we have to be so compassionate to are the source of my enlightenment. Now it's a well I get to draw from. They're the source of my enlightenment. They're the source of me developing the highest potentials of myself to really plant the seeds of the 6 perfections and give rise to a path of awakening for yourself and all sentient beings to no longer suffer. What a gift. What a gift. Yeah, let me pick up that phone. Play nice. Because on the other end of it is the cause for my enlightenment, for the welfare of all sentient beings. It's a very, very different shift in how we engage in life. And that our troubles and difficulties do not define us. They got us here. Our troubles and difficulties and challenges are all karma that has ripened so that we could be here now. We've had enough difficulties and pains and adversities to finally have a moment of clarity that says, I don't have to live this way anymore. Not too many people have had that clarity. And you'll see them, because they're decorating samsara a lot. And there's a lot of suffering going on there. But just by virtue of you being here tonight, you have the qualities of a rare and precious human rebirth, which means these 18 specific qualities to achieve enlightenment. You've seen it. The door is open, it's cracked. And so, we just want to remember that once in a while. So we'll pause there just before we do our dedication. Just want to take a moment to just remind everyone of this prayer and rare and precious gift of this opportunity we have in this very lifetime. It's something that we say and it can come and go rather easily. But in truth, we just don't know how many days we have, And recently I've, been asked to say prayers for people who have transitioned, and some quite young. And sometimes we forget that. So in our practices, we have in our preliminary practices, one of them is really to take some time in the morning to call to mind, that this day is never going to come again, that we don't know if we have tomorrow, that death is certain, time of death is uncertain. That's just the way it is. And if we can really bring that to mind, it can become the fruit that gives us the opportunity to engage in our days in much more meaningful ways. I mean, imagine if we thought and bared in mind that this could be our last day. What are the seeds that I want to water on my last day? And when I die, what's going to matter? Is it whether or not I had to push a bunch of buttons on a phone? Or what's going to matter is how did I treat the people that were in front of me or with me? That's okay. That's one of our dear friends coming for the potluck. So hopefully he brought something good. Probably calling pepinos or something for us. So as we get ready for our dedication, then of course tonight is potluck night. So the second Wednesday of every month we have a potluck where we gather together. If you didn't bring something, don't worry about it. Troops are coming with food. And we'll share in some community with each other and get to know each other a little bit. So having said that, we'll do a little dedication, dedicating the merit and wisdom we've accumulated here for the benefit of all sentient beings. So let us dedicate the merit and wisdom that we have accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes, both individually and collectively. We dedicate this for the benefit of all sentient beings. May all sentient beings be free of suffering and find lasting happiness, and may we be able to use the merit and wisdom accumulated here today and throughout our lifetimes to purify our own minds, to transform adversity onto a path of the mind of awakening, so that we can truly be of benefit to all sentient beings. All right. Well, thank you all so much, and thank you for joining us online. Sorry you can't join the potluck, but you should have one wherever you're at, and make sure there's ice cream. Okay. All right. Be well. Thank you so much, and try to stay out of trouble.